Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Izuku POV. Izuku had just arrived home at around 2:30 on Monday morning. His mother had picked him up having received a call from UA about what had happened, though thankfully Eri was still sound asleep. His mother told him that Eri had taken ages to finally fall asleep, as she had been super excited for her big brother return come Monday. Izuku couldn't help but smile at that notion, though the details he's learned of Eri's life before meeting him soured the mood. He felt like punching something but elected to sleep instead. Come 9:30 in the morning, Izuku was awoken by a ray of sunshine that was the hyperactive spirit of his little sister. "Big brother Izu, you're back." Eri cried out happily as she jumped on top of her brother. "Yeah, I'm back, Eri. How've you been?" Izuku replied rather drowsy-like. "I'm fine, big brother. Me and Mama Inko had fun all week. But I missed you, and I'm glad you're home again," she replied as she hugged him kindly. Izuku immediately hugged her back with as much affection as he could muster. "I'm happy to be back too, Eri, and don't worry, I'll never let anyone hurt you ever again." Izuku thinks determinedly as he remembers what Nemoto told him of Overhaul's experiments. "I'll add that to the rapidly growing list of problems in my life." Izuku thinks as he mentally pins that line of thought for later, alongside things such as Todoroki's kidnapping, monsters potentially cropping up, but Kugo being a villain now, AFO likely personally hating him, and any and all other smaller issues in his life. After breakfast, Izuku felt rather drained from the last 24 hours and decided to just take a day of respite with Eri whilst his mother went to work. He mingled around the house and played video games with Eri as he remembered the last few hours at camp. Flashback. After the remaining villains had escaped with Todoroki in tow, the police arrived an hour later with several heroes as backup. The villains that got left behind were all arrested and shoved in ambulances with armed SCRTs, whilst the Nomu's remains were cleaned up. When the police started to do a head count, they asked who wasn't present, and Izuku told them about the auxiliary bunkhouse where many students had taken refuge with Kota. Speaking of the young lad, when he returned to camp, he immediately ran into Mandalay's arms, who in turn thanked Izuku on behalf of the WWPC by offering their aid in anything he needed going forward. Izuku humbly accepted and just asked if they could visit with Kota in the future. After that, all the students were taken to the nearest hospital for treatment and questioning as the police called their parents. Eventually, Izuku and Momo were called aside by Detective Tsukachi for questioning. "Well, this is another fine mess you guys have found yourself in," Tsukachi states drearily, clearly tired. "Well, it's not like we wanted to be the main target of these villains' attention," Momo replied with a pouty face. "I'm well aware of that, Miss Yaoyorozu. Now, can you both please explain what happened tonight?" Tsukachi replied as he pulled out his notepad. Momo went first by recounting her experience during the evening. The gas cloud, the weird mind experience with shades, the fight against the Yakuza, and the tracker she placed on villain with a sack on his head. Aside from the strange dream, she had all of Momo's information was very valuable, especially the thing about the tracker. Tsukachi requested that Momo make a device that could locate the tracker, and she did so happily, simply requesting that the heroes and police in the nightmare for her class and their friends. After accepting Momo's request, Izuku was asked about his experience on the forest, and by the end of it, Tsukachi wishes he hadn't asked. Izuku described his rescue of Kota and subsequent defeat of both Muscular and Nemoto, the latter of which Izuku requested to talk to the detective about in a one-on-one. The detective accepted and asked Izuku to continue, so he did. Izuku talked about rushing around the forest looking for his classmates and how they'd beaten the villains on their own. He talked about how he killed the Nomu that had attacked Ragdoll, but he described afterwards sacred the detective. "I'm sorry, but could you please repeat that?" Tsukachi asked with a pale face. "After I'd killed the Nomu and was subsequently checking on Ragdoll, a slimy portal opened behind me and an arm came out. I grabbed the arm and it emitted red and black lighting, and I subsequently ripped it off." Izuku explains as he hands over the arm he'd removed, still oozing some BLD. "You're certain it emitted red and black lightning?" Tsukachi asked. "Yeah, I'm certain of it. The lighting didn't hurt or anything, but it felt weird, like it was trying to take something from me," Izuku explained as he mentally removed the experience. SHD, SHD, F, F, SHD, F. Sukachi muttered before yelling expletives. Are you all right, detective? Momo asked curiously. No, particularly seeing as Mr. Midoriya here may have had an encounter with you-know-who, and took his arm off. The detective replied exhaustively as he appeared to visibly age. Wait, you mean to tell me that I tore off his arm? Izuku asked as the detective nodded silently. The room then went silent as Izuku's actions sunk in properly. Phew, luck. Izuku murmured as he realized just how sad AFO must be at him. End of flashback. So now Izuku had to be wary of AFO not just because he'd killed the man's anti-symbol of peace and stopped his mercenaries on Island, but also because he likely torn off his arm. After putting a pin in that problem, and after letting Eri beat him at Mario Kart 107 Deluxe Alpha, Izuku decided to check up on his friends via their group chat. He grabbed his phone to ask how his classmates are doing and how their unconscious friends are. As it currently stood, most were recovering well enough, though some are still at the hospital waiting for friends to wake up who'd been caught in the gas cloud without a mask. After reading all his friends had to say and sending them his best wishes for recovery, Izuku received a phone call from Kirishima. Well, this is certainly going to be awkward, Izuku thinks to himself as he remembered what Kirishima wanted to do. Hey Midoriya bro, you good? Kirishima asked calmly. Yeah, I'm alright. I'm just hanging out with Eri right now. Izuku replied. Cool. Say hey for me, will ya? But anyway, I wanted to apologize for what I said earlier at the hospital. Kirishima explained awkwardly as they both remembered the conversation. You mean the thing where you called me I quote you, an unmanly coward? Izuku asked as he could practically hear his friend's enthusiasm drop. Yeah, that. I'm sorry for saying that, man. I just wanted to help out, you know. I mean, dude, this is the third time our class have encountered the League and Todoroki got kidnapped. I was upset, alright. So I'm sorry. For what it's worth, you're the manliest guy I know. Kirishima explained and apologized. It's all good, bro. It's not like I didn't see where you were coming from when you suggested we have Momo make another tracker and go after the League ourselves. But with the state we were all in, we would have all been killed. Izuku explains as he recounts the redhead's plan. Sure, he himself would not have been killed, but he wasn't going to risk his friends. When you say it like that, bro, I see why you and the others rejected it. It sounds utterly suicidal. Kirishima replies with a chuckle. Yeah, but that's just how you are. Bro, you think with your heart before your head. It makes you a great hero, but a pretty terrible strategist. Izuku explained with a chuckle as he heard Kirishima doing the same. Thanks, bro. I think I needed to hear that. And thanks for not listening to me back at the hospital. Kirishima replied kindly. No worries, bro. Just remember that Todoroki will be back soon. The heroes will deal with the League and get him back as soon as possible. Izuku states hopefully. Yeah, you're right, bro. See you soon then, dude. Love ya. Kirishima replies. You too, Kiri. Izuku replies with a smile at his friend's antics before returning to play with Eri. As the day went by, it was mostly uneventful, save for a certain surprise visitor. But other than that, Izuku's day was mostly just spent recovering from the last week of training and chilling with his little sister and introducing her to World of Anime. Eventually, when Inko got home, the three of them had dinner before sitting down to watch TV. After watching a movie together, Inko began flipping through the channels as Izuku helped Eri read a pop-up book. Nothing was really on that night. That was until she got to the news channel. And now we go live to an interview with Dean Nizu of UA and his staff about the attack on the Wild Wild Pussycats campgrounds and the abduction of a student. A news anchor states as they retire to a feed that expands to fill the screen. The three of them listened, all looking on intently and with great interest. The first thing that caught Izuku's eye was actually Aizawa, looking clean and well-dressed for once, alongside Vlad King, Nizu, Sukachi, and few others who were making public apologies for failing to keep the students safe at the camp. Izuku thought that it was a bit unfair to lump the school with absolute responsibility for what happened, as if they knew they'd be attacked again in such a secret location. In his opinion, the school had done everything in its power to keep them safe. It's not like they accessed to anti-warp portal technology or something. After the initial apologies were voiced, the questions began, and oh boy did the media decide to go for the throat. Many of the journalists made baseless accusations and allegations about UA's reputation for security and even attacked how the university taught its students. However, one journalist in particular who'd been hounding Yue with the hardest questions, caught Izuku's attention. The journalist had blue skin, purple hair, and green eyes with black sclera. She'd just asked Yue why they'd given their students the all-clear to use their quirks and fight. Aizawa then replied, with his logical tone, that he'd had Mandalay do that so that the students could defend themselves and escape, and that it would have been illogical and dangerous not to let them fight. Izuku agreed with Aizawa's logic on that one, but it appeared that the journalists weren't satisfied. Another journalist asked if Yue approved of one of their students putting a villain in coma, which took Izuku by surprise. Which villain had ended up comatose? He soon got his answer when another journalist asked if the police had announced that Muscular was now comatose with a very minor chance of waking up. So it was his villain that got comed. Oh well, it's like he cared what happened to that monster, though the media certainly did, and made a whole song and dance about it. Aizawa explained that the villain was trying to kill the child of the late water hose duo in fact, and that Muscular was more monster than man. He then, genuinely, complimented Izuku, without using his name of course, by saying he'd done a magnificent and heroic job in his eyes. Izuku get a bit emotional from that, he had to admit. However, those emotions swiftly changed with the next question. The blue-skinned journalist from before actually named Izuku as the one who'd done it, and asked if Yue approved of his actions. Izuku, along with Inko and Eri, were shocked. How the hell did she know who'd been the one to defeat Muscular? Was there an information leak? From the looks on the faculty's faces, it was clear they were thinking the same thing. The journalist then went on to leak how Izuku had been the one to kill the Nomu at the USJ, that he'd been the one to help All Might at Island, and that he was the one to fight the BLD villain at Kyoshi, all facts which hadn't been told to the public. All 3 times Izuku had simply been listed as unnamed student, and yet this woman knew he'd been responsible or present at all 3 events. The only things he'd been publicly credited for was apprehending Overhaul and Stain. Nizu immediately shut the women down by demanding she not spill personal, and more the point classified, information about students, and that if she did so again, she would be removed from the conference hall. Aizawa then followed this up with yet another genuine compliment, calling Izuku one of the best he'd ever had, a magnificent and intelligent young man, and even saying he was the strongest Yue had seen since All Might. Aizawa then ended his little rant by saying he was certain Midoriya will be an exceptional hero one day. Izuku felt like crying a little bit honestly, as did his mother and sister, who hugged him proudly. After the journalists finished their little witch hunt on Yue, the conference such topics to the League of Villains. Nizu assured the media that they had the situation well in hand, as he has a TV wheeled in with a live feed to MT Lady smashing a warehouse Nizu explained was filled with Nomo. He then went on to explain that another team of heroes led by All Might himself was currently apprehending League as they speak. Unfortunately, he didn't get the chance to show the media that as the area on screen was suddenly caught in a massive explosion, which cut the feed. The TV feed, the Midoriya family we're watching, then suddenly swapped channels to the live news network. What greeted their eyes horrified them. Kamino Ward had been leveled, unconscious and bleeding heroes lay strewn across the debris, and at the center of the destruction was a man in a suit and menacing skull helmet floating in the air. Oh my god, what happened? Inko asked frightfully as she stared at the screen. That man, his aura, his killing intent, it's the same as the one from the forest, that's AFO. Izuku realized as he looked at the monster in human skin All Might had told him about. The news reporter relayed that a hero police task force had tracked down the League of Villains' hideout and attacked to arrest them. She then went on to explain that according to on-the-ground sources that the mission had all been but a success, until the side team had attacked a warehouse allegedly containing Nomo. The TV showed handheld amateur footage from a building top that showed MT Lady crushing a building only for a massive explosion to rock the area a few minutes later. The screen then changed back to the live broadcast. TV broadcast. The entire country saw the menacing skull-masked man in a suit talking with the remnants of the League, only for All Might to fly in and smash the villain. Only the villain didn't fall, and in fact matched the #1 hero. As the 2 titans of heroism and villainy clashed, Endeavor alongside other heroes attacked the League themselves. They managed to rescue the unnamed student from the League, but the villains still bitterly fought on. All appeared to be going well as Kimui Woods skirted the unnamed student from the battlefield, but then the skull-marked villain blasted them all with a completely different quirk, some type of massive air cannon. The country then looked on in horror as the villain used a completely different quirk, one comprised of black and red tendrils, to stab and forcibly activate a League member's portal quirk, allowing them all to escape. The public didn't have much time to process what they'd seen as All Might yet again attacked the villain. All Might and the unknown villain, many were calling Skullface online, clashed in an epic battle of strength where the two seemed evenly matched. All Might attacked the villain with his iconic smash style, but the villain seemed familiar with it and used those tendrils to catch him out the air and drag him through the rubble. The hero quickly recovered and launched himself at the villain, who summoned an invisible shield which absorbed the impact's kinetic energy and reversed it, sending All Might flying. The hero reoriented himself and used a smash to propel himself through the air like a human bullet back to the fight. All Might then used a thunderclap to kick up a massive dust cloud to blind the villain. The villain immediately used that air cannon to clear the dust, but All Might was nowhere to be seen. That was until he turned around. Smash! All Might punched the villain in the face with direct impact smash, but the villain barely even reacted. It was as if they'd received a light punch, not a building-sundering smash. However, their helmet had taken damage, but what the people saw horrified them. The man's face was on full display, or what was left of it. The villain's face was half covered in scar tissue which blinded him and left awful lumps on his head. The villain then smiled a cruel smile, one that inspired fear and despair. His left arm then exploded with muscle growth as he punched All Might into the remnants of a building. He then walked through the air towards the hero's location. The two of them then started at one another as if daring each other to make the next move. But then, the villain turned his attention elsewhere. The camera panned to see a woman who had survived the destruction of Kamino, pinned under rubble and injured. The villain smiled again before lifting his and pointing it at the woman. The then sudden erupted with power as the villain fired a concentration shockwave at the woman who braved herself for death. In that moment, All Might threw himself in front of the woman and used his body to shield her from the blast. There was an almighty explosion on impact, and the area was blanketed in dust as a result. As the smoke cleared from the villain's murderous attack, the country all simultaneously gasped in shock. Where they hoped to see All Might standing tall with a smile, they saw a withered and weak man, barely holding on as steam erupted from his body. Who was this man? And where was All Might? Two questions which paralyzed the nation as the truth sank in. This man was All Might. Third-person POV. Is that All Might? A civilian asked fearfully. That can't be him, right? Another asked. This is a joke, right? That can't be him. Another shouted woefully. As the citizens all murmured and shouted their thoughts, one question silenced them all. Mommy, is All Might going to lose? A child asked his mother fearfully. That one question, asked in the middle of a street, by an innocent child, spread across the streets like a cancer of fear as people began to panic as they realized their symbol of peace just might lose. Chaos and fear erupted in the streets. That was until All Might won't lose. A sudden voice cried out in the panicking streets. A few people turned to see a teenage boy with tears in their eyes and determined look on their face. All Might won't lose because he can't lose, he cried out as he looked at the jumbo screen. What this teen didn't know, however, was that across the country, people were dating the exact same thing. Across the nation, the fearful populace rise in defiance of their fear and began chanting All Might's name in support of their hero. From Hokkaido to the islands of Tokata, nearly every citizen of the country began chanting in support of their symbol of peace. All Might POV. A few minutes earlier, as Yagi stood there, completely exhausted yet utterly defiant, he could barely muster the strength to go on. Why? Because he'd failed. He'd failed to keep the peace in Japan. He'd failed to kill AFO all those years ago. He failed to keep his students safe. He'd failed to save the people of Kamino, but worst of all, he'd failed his MSTR, Nana Shimura. How? Because her grandson ended up a villain. AFO, before reducing him to his frail form, had just told him that Tamura Shigaraki, leader of the League of Villains, and AFO's personal disciple, was once Tinko Shimura, son of Kotaro Shimura, and grandson of Nana Shimura. AFO had bragged that her saved the young boy over a decade ago from the streets after the boy had unintentionally killed his abusive family when his quirk manifested. AFO had mocked All Might by saying he'd saved the boy when no hero had bothered to. That realization had broken All Might and left him vulnerable to the attack that had reduced him to his true form, that of a weak and pathetic man with no strength left to spare. At this point, Yagi genuinely felt like just giving up. He'd failed so many people that he couldn't continue to think of himself as a hero. That was until he heard a voice. "You can do it, All Might." A woman's voice shouted, causing Yagi to turn and see a woman trapped in the rubble that he'd just saved. Then it happened again. "Don't give up now, All Might." Another voice from the rubble came. Then another. "We still believe in you." Another voice cried out in desperate hope. Then another, and another, and another, and another still, but it didn't end with the victims of Kamino. "You've got this, brat. Show him who you are." The voice of his mentor Gran Torino cried out. "You've never once faltered before. So why should you do so now, All Might?" The voice of Best Jeanist yelled as he held his guts in. Then, more and more, heroes and civilians began chanting his name. "All Might! All Might! All Might! All Might! All Might! All Might!" The people cried out across the country. "You've always talked about how to go plus ultra, you smiling oaf. Now show us just how to do so," came the unlikely voice of Endeavor. "He's right. No, they're all right. I've spent the last 30 years telling them all to go plus ultra, but despite that I'm sitting here lamenting my failures." Yagi thought to himself as he stood firm and began to approach AFO. "If I can't show them all how to go plus ultra, then I will have truly failed in my mission to be a hero, to be a symbol." He continued as he readied himself and remembered Nana's words to him. "Oh, you still have the strength to walk." AFO mocked as he leered at Yagi the best he could without any eyes. "I'd be a terrible hero if I gave up at the last hurdle, AFO." Yagi replies defiantly as he pointed at the villain to challenge him. "Then I guess I'll just have to break their spirits by breaking you." AFO replied as his right arm began convulsing and growing. "I've been saving this attack just for you, All Might. It's my ultimate quirk combination attack, guaranteed to smash you into a fine red paste." The supervillain explained as he reared back his now disgustingly hypertrophic arm. "You're wrong, AFO, you know why? Because right here, right now I'm going to surpass my limits," Yagi stated as he stood defiantly staring at the villain. HAAA, before then breathing. In, fwa, and out, fwoosh. As his muscles expanded with power they had never felt before and steam erupted from his cells. "Thank you, young Midoriya." All Might thinks to himself as he remembers back to but a few hours ago. Flashback. Knock, knock, knock. Toshinori Yagi knocked on the door of the Midoriya household and stood outside, slightly nervous. As the door opened, however, he felt a bit better, as he was met with his most promising student besides his protege. "Oh, Sensei Yagi, what are you doing here?" Izuku asked curiously as he stood in the doorway. "I've come to talk to you about a matter of some urgency. May I come in?" Yagi exploded as he requested entrance, to which Izuku obliged. The two of them entered the living room and got comfortable as Izuku told Toshinori his mother and sister were out shopping. It was then that Toshinori asked his question. "You want to know what?" Izuku asked in a confused manner. "I wanted to teach me how to surpass myself." Yagi states again, bluntly. How?" Izuku asked, still confused. "During your fight against the Nomu at the USJ, the footage showed you using some kind of breathe technique before you unleashed your super move. I want you to teach me that." Yagi requested as humbly as possible. "You mean the awakening breathe? Why would you want to know how to use it, Yagi?" Izuku asked as he specified the technique. "Because in a mere hours I may be in a situation in which lives depend on it." Yagi replied vaguely. "This is about AFO, isn't it?" Izuku stated, and Yagi nodded. "You're going to fight him again after 5 years." Izuku continues as Yagi just nods again. Izuku then took a moment to mull over his thoughts as he considered the consequences of teaching Yagi a technique that could kill a young and healthy man, two traits that Yagi didn't embody. However, Izuku knew what was at stake and made his decision. "Okay, I'll teach you technique. Just be warned, the toll it takes on a healthy body is brutal. The toll it will take on you may be fatal." Izuku clarified. "My life is worth giving, even if it means saving even just one more person." Yagi replied heroically as Izuku revealed the secrets of the technique. End of flashback. Thank you for letting this old fool be a hero one more time. He thinks to himself as his power surges. As Yagi took the breathe and relinquished all his bodily restrictions, the once meager embers of One for All exploded into a raging inferno, causing Yagi to burst back into his all-might form. Incredible. I feel like my old self again. No. I feel even better. I feel plus ultra? All Might thinks to himself as he stares down his arch-nemesis, whose blind face was racked with utter confusion. So you still have the will to fight left in you yet? No matter, I'll still smash you the same way you did to all my allies. AFO yelled as he swung his massive arm at All Might. But it was too late. Whoosh. All Might closed the gap in an instant. What? Impossible. He could never move that fast before. AFO panicked as his eyes met his nemesis. Plus Ultra Aya. All Might yells as he bypasses AFO's ultimate attack as his own fist ignites with furious and thunderous power. Goodbye, All for One. He silently states as his fist reaches AFO's face, smashing into it. This is my final United States of Smamish. All Might bellowed with unwavering ferocity as he fist crashes into AFO's face with the force of truly cataclysmic meteorite. Shrakakum. As AFO's head impacts the ground, an incalculable shockwave shakes the entire city with an earthquake as a tornado is whipped up by the vacuum left behind by the sheer impact force. The only reason the rest of the city wasn't leveled by the impact was because of AFO's face absorbing the force of it. Goodbye, One for All. All Might laments as the inferno of power he held burnt out, leaving naught but the smoldering ashes of his power. As the smoke cleared, all of Japan saw the outcome of the fight. There stood their hero, All Might, once more having shrunken, standing defiantly over the villain, bloodied fist raised up high in victory. Meanwhile, as Yagi and the country celebrated the victory, AFO was going through a crisis. AFO POV. All Might's last attack had been several times more powerful than AFO had predicted, and he was panicking. He felt his body growing colder by the nanosecond, and his mind was fading quickly. He swiftly used his cognition-boosting quirks to try and think of a way to survive to fight another day. But no plan he conceived of was sufficient. He was just too weak and too injured to do anything. Was this it? The end? Am I going to die? AFO thinks to himself fearfully. The man had spent the better part of 2 centuries doing everything in his power to escape death, but now the Reaper's shadow was upon him, and he could feel it. No, I can't die here. Not now. Not when I have so much left to do. Not when Tamura isn't ready to receive my essence. AFO rapidly thinks to himself as the world begins to darken around him. I had such wondrous plans. For the world, I can't let it all go to waste. He thinks as he tries to deny his fate. As his neurons began slowing, his heart rate dropped, and his skin grew cold. AFO felt something he'd not felt in centuries: fear. I don't want to die. He thinks as the coldness of reality set in and darkness drank deep of his soul. But in the end, even immortals must accept the inevitable fate of all life. Thus, AFO accepted his fate. He'd failed. He'd failed to be the person he set out to be. I guess life really does imitate art. I spent 200 years trying to win as the villain, and just like all those comics, in the end, I lost. He thinks as the world darkens. Yoichi, I hope you can forgive me. He begs as the darkness enveloped his mind. But then he saw something. AA light. Brother Zen. A voice called out. AFO soon found himself in a realm of dark light, and before him stood the one person he'd ever loved, his brother, Yoichi. Yoichi, is it really you? AFO asked as he stepped forward. Well, who else would know your real name, if only me? Yoichi asked, his face covered by shadow. Brother, what is going on? Where are we? Zen asked as he surveyed the area. Limbo, or at least a place between the realms of life and death. Yoichi replied as he approached. But why am I here, and not in hell? And why are you not in heaven? Zen asked as his emotions got the better of him, having not seen his brother in centuries. Because I wanted to see you again, big bro. Why else? Yoichi replied. But you hate me. I locked you in a vault for decades. I've killed hundreds of people. I stole power. I forced power onto you. So why? Why would you ever want to see me again? Zen asked as he knelt in somberness, his apathy and cruelty dying in the presence of his brother. I forgive you, was his brother's reply. What? He asked. Everything you've said, Everything you've done I forgive you. Yoichi states firmly. Brother. Zen cries out as he hugs his little bro's legs in happiness and solace. Come now, Zen. Let's play video games and eat onigiri like old times. Yoichi suggests as he holds out his hand. Zen, so entranced by a chance of being with his brother again, abandoned all reason and immediately took his brother's hand. But something was wrong. As he looked up at his brother's face, he saw not the face of man who had suffered illness his entire life. Instead, he saw brain tissue. Who are you? Zen demanded as he tried to pull away from the imposter, but found himself unable to do so. One who has a purpose for you all for one. A divine purpose. The being states as it floods AFO's mind with this new purpose and overtakes his biology. Perfect. Now rise and be crowned my new monster king. God boomed as his power infected every cell AFO's body. All Might POV. Meanwhile, as AFO saw the face of God, Yagi was trying to leave the field. You good over there, brat? The voice of his mentor Gran Torino asked as the diminutive old man blasted over. Yeah, I'll grunt, I'll live. Yagi replied as he clenched in pain and walked towards the remaining heroes who'd been recently unconscious. So this is who you really are, All Might? The gruff voice of Endeavor asked as shadow cast over his face. I'll explain it all later, Enji. Right now I need a bath and nap. Yagi replied with a faint smile. The heroes all had a good chuckle at that. Ha ha ha. They all laughed, until... Ha ha ha. Their laughter was drowned out by another. Haha, I would suggest postponing those planned Tashinori because we're not through just yet. A booming voice cried from the crater Yagi had just staggered out of. All the heroes immediately put their guards up as a wave of incomprehensible hatred and evil washed over them. No, that's not possible. Yagi cried out as fell to his knees due to the sheer pressure of free wave. Oh, but it is Tashinori. AFO replied as his mutating form emerged from the crater. Oh my god. Endeavor shouted as he and the other heroes all stood and watched as AFO violently mutated before their very eyes. The villain's all-too-human body contorted and stretched in inhuman ways as every cell in his body changed. AFO grew to nearly 20 feet tall. His clothes exploded off his body, leaving but a loincloth to hide his modesty. His torso distended, and as two additional sets of arms scrounged from his form. Below the elbow of each arm grew hardened muscle and bone gauntlets of varying sizes. The top original arms remained proportional to the villain's new size, whilst the set below grew to great size, and the lowest set were disproportionately small. His skin turned a sickly gray as the muscles beneath it increased in density and power. Finally, his head became bestial with sharp fangs lining his mouth and a massive horned crest growing from his once scar tissue-riddled cranium. As he mutated, AFO simply floated in midair as different elements and quirks began manifesting around each hand. This shouldn't be possible. I put enough power in that attack to level a city thrice over. It should have killed him. Yagi states in horror as the heroes all watched the villain mutate. Indeed, it did, Tashinori. Your last attack spelled my end. But it appears that Providence has other plans for me. AFO states in reply as he flexes his new form. It doesn't matter how you survived, villain, or how you attained this new form. Heroes on me. Let's take this monster out once and for all. Endeavor shouted as he launched himself at the newly monsterized villain with several other heroes on tow. Yes, please do try and fight back. I'm in need of subjects to test my new power, and it is so much more exciting when they struggle. AFO replied maliciously as he engaged the heroes with a quirk in each hand. Then two sides then clashed in an epic collision of power. Shrakakum, Midoriya household. A few minutes prior, the three family members had been cheering for All Might's victory. But when AFO began his ascension to monsterhood, they were all silenced. Oh my god, what is that monster? Inko asked. It's scary. Eri whimpered as she held on to Inko tightly. This isn't good. If that man really was AFO, and he's undergone monsterization, then... Izuka thinks to himself as thoughts of Orochi flash through his mind. Then, he may ascend to become a monster king, which means only one thing: threat-level dragon. Izuku concludes as he watches AFO mutate violently. The three of them saw Endeavor step forward confidently with other heroes in tow and attack the monster, and it wasn't even a fight. The heroes got thrown around like rag dolls as AFO unleashed dozens of powerful attacks, which defeated every hero within seconds. In less than a minute, all the heroes, sans Endeavor and Gran Torino, were screened across the battlefield covered in injuries. Big brother, will the nice heroes win? Eri asked as she went to hug her brother, only to find nothing to her side. Big brother? She asked as she saw the door close as both she and Inko heard what sounded like thunder. Izuku POV. God, if you're up there, the one who reincarnated me, not the monster guy, then please, give me the speed to reach Kamino before more lives are lost. Izuku silently begs as he races towards the leveled war zone on foot and breaking the sound barrier several times over. Kamino battlefield. AFO loomed over the defeated heroes, cackling like a monster. As he did so, he held Endeavor in one of his large hands and began to squeeze. Looks as though it's my lucky day. I get to end the careers of not just the #1 hero, but the #2 as well. AFO cackles as he begins to crush his Endeavor in his hand as the hero cried out in pain. I don't think so. A voice shouted out, catching AFO's attention. Crack, and getting a powerful kick to the face for his curiosity. Izuku had arrived and kicked AFO in the head hard enough to break off one of his horns, and causing AFO to drop Endeavor and be sent reeling. Young Midoriya? What in Sam Hill are you doing here? Yagi cried out in fear. I'm here to hunt a monster, sir. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to do my stuff. Izuku replies coldly. Not a chance, kid. He couldn't even touch that guy. So what the hell is ZYGT like you gonna do? Torino asked as he braced Yagi. I'm going to kill him, and you're going to get the others out of here. Izuku replied firmly with no room to debate. I'm not going grunt anywhere. Endeavor states as he proves himself to his feet. I'm with the matchstick on this one, kid. And why the hell should you be giving me orders? Torino asks as Izuku suddenly appears behind him faster than he could see. Because other than me, you're the fastest one here, Torino. And if you don't, then the other heroes and civilians will die in the crossfire. Izuku explains as Torino looks at him with a bewildered face. Even at his best, Toshinori could never move that fast. Hell, in my prime, I could never move that fast. Just what the hell is this kid? Torino thinks to himself as he starts evacuating the fallen heroes. Izuku then looked towards AFO, who had finished recovering from his surprise attack earlier, and then to Endeavor. Endeavor, I hate you for everything you've done to your family and everything for which you stand for. Izuku states bluntly as he looks the flame hero on the eye. And I'm sure you feel the same about me. But right now we need to put our full focus into sending that thing to the afterlife. He continues as he points towards AFO, who is charging several quirks. Can I count on you not to hold back against it? Izuku asked, seriously surprising the flame hero. Like you even need to ask, brat. The flame hero replied with all professionalism. Good, glad we're both in agreement. Izuku replies as the attack came. If you're done talking, then I'll obliterate you all now. AFO cries out as he unleashes a truly gigantic barrage of attacks consisting of dozens of quirks that could project fire, water, ice, lightning, earth, lasers, plasma, ionic energy, radiation, sonic waves, psionic power, and divine energy. The attacks rained down on the battlefield like a relentless artillery bombardment as Izuku, Endeavor, and Torino dodged everything they could. As Izuku and the others dodged and parried AFO's onslaught barrage of attacks, he began breaking down just how strong AFO had become after undergoing monsterization. Back in the forest, Izuku had pegged him in the mid-demon level tier or monsters, with his power being higher than Bug God, but being inferior to something like the Deep Sea King he saw online fighting Demon Cyborg. Now the villain had certainly risen in threat level to Dragon. However, he wasn't exactly in the upper cadre tier just yet. Izuku determined that AFO was currently just below the level of overgrown Rover from back when they fought, but that wasn't the only similarity between the two monsters. As Izuku dodged AFO's barrage, he noticed that the villain made no real attempt to aim his onslaught and relied purely on the sheer quantity of powerful attacks to end his foe, much like Rovers used his fireballs in their bout. Izuku also determined something much more important: AFO had no real battle IQ beyond power and intimidation. Even during his battle with All Might, the villain seemed to purely rely on theatrical grandstanding and overwhelming power output, a strategy which All Might himself used. In essence, What this meant was that AFO had no martial arts prowess and was used to always being the strongest in the room, a mentality Izuku could easily exploit. Oi, is that the best you can do? Izuku shouts as he returns several attacks to AFO, causing damage. Excuse me? AFO replies, agitated at this child's gall to attack him. You heard me, you mediocre monster. I said, is that your best? Izuku reinforced as he insulted the villain. Do you have any idea who you're taking to boy? AFO asked indignantly. Not a supervillain, I can tell that much. Izuku states as he launches at AFO before cutting off an arm. The limb swiftly regenerated, but Izuku already knew that would happen. Did you really think inflicting such pitiful damage would take me down, boy? The monster asked mockingly as he flexed his new limb. No, but I figured it'd jog your memory of me. Izuku replies with smug smile, causing AFO to recognize him. You're the brat who tore my arm off in the forest and somehow resisted my quirk. AFO yelled furiously as he ignored a barrage of fireballs from Endeavor. Yeah, that was me. Which means you tried to take my quirk, not that I had any to begin with. Izuku replied cockily. Ridiculous. Everyone knows that quirks are power. To be without a quirk is to be nothing at all. AFO explains maliciously. Figured a lazy coward like you would say that. Izuku states, completely infuriating the villain. How dare you mock me, boy? Do you have any idea who I am? Have you even the slightest idea the pain and despair my very name brings? AFO shouts furiously. Oh, please, from what I've seen, you're nothing but a lazy coward who can't fight without his precious little quirks. Quirks which you've stolen just to stack on top of one another to give yourself power. I'm guessing you haven't shred a single one of them, and you just throw everything you have in your opponent and hope that it's enough to end them or scare them. Izuku mocks, angering the villain even further. Well, this lazy coward style of battle has been the end of many foolish heroes who dared think themselves my equal. AFO shouts as he attacked with full force using his tendrils and emitter quirks. Izuku just used Water Stream Rock's smashing fist to parry the attacks, and then ran up the extended tendrils before pummeling the villain with his fists as he sliced flesh and shattered ribs. As he did so, Endeavor unleashed a torrent of intense flames, whilst Torino, who just fished evacuating the civilians and other heroes, attacked his head with vicious kicks. Enough! AFO shouted as he unleashed a massive air cannon blast, throwing them all away. You lesser cretins dare to challenge the ultimate supervillain. I am all for one, the Demon King of Japan. He shouted menacingly with indignation. Ha ha, don't make laugh. Izuku states as he recovers from the blast. You may have a near unending supply of quirks to attack with, and you might be strong, but you simply don't instill enough. Izuku continued to mock the villain. Enough what? Boy? AFO demanded. Fear. Izuku states firmly as he stretches. I am fear incarnate. AFO states matter-of-factly. Now you're not scary in any way. Izuku states with smug expression. Don't press your luck, boy. I am fear made flesh. In fact, I am the absolute fear omen. AFO cries out, renaming himself as he launches a contingent, his energy spheres. You're a fool who's playing with power he never earned. A lonely old man without a single truly loyal friend. A selfish idiot who's wasted 2 centuries sitting on an unearned throne in the dark. Izuku mocks as he casually deflects the attacks. In response, AFO just starts laughing. You're right, boy. I am lonely, and any good king needs an army. AFO states ominously as he turns his attention to the rubble of Kamino. They'll do nicely. He states menacingly to the confusion of the Izuku and the others who'd just recovered. Just then, AFO generates dozens of black and red tendrils. In mere moments, the tendrils had scoured the rubble of Kamino and pierced the corpses of over 200 civilians, men, women, and children alike. And what better army for the king of monsters? AFO states as the tendrils ignite with the glow of his namesake quirk as the corpses begin to writhe and contort themselves. Then an army of monsters. AFO finishes as the coroners all transmogrify before their very eyes. The civilian corpses all rapidly underwent mutilative augmentation as their skulls burst open to reveal their brains, and their skins all turned shades of black and gray. Their bodies mutated and contorted in ways that sickened nature itself as the poor corpses had life forced upon them. The body's musculoskeletal structure all dramatically changed as their biology was abused and violated. as their DNA was rewritten with new monstrous genetics. Before long, the Ares soon faced a new challenge. An army of over 200 monsterized Nomu. That about evens things up, don't you think? AFO gleefully mocks as his creations all groan and like zombies. You sick, twisted monster. You already killed them once, and now you tear them from their graves to be your mindless puppets. Torino yelled in anger as he witnessed the monstrous creations JRK with unnatural life. Why do you care? As you said, they're already dead. I'm just giving them a purpose. AFO replies cruelly as his creations await orders. Now, my Nomu, fetch me their heads. AFO commands as he unleashes the army of Nomu upon the trio of heroes. Incoming. Torino cries out as they are swarmed by the Nomu. The battle then became a bloodbath as the three heroes ripped through the Nomu with all their strength. Endeavor was burning them all alive and flambeing their flesh with more heat than he'd ever produced before. Torino was dashing around like a human bullet, kicking heads from necks and crushing skulls like a wrecking ball. Izuku was slicing them to bits using whirlwind iron-cutting fist. But within the crimson-stained melee, Izuku realized something. Wait a minute. These Nomu don't have extra quirks. Izuku realizes as he cleaves a Nomu covered in mouths in half. He must not be able to replicate quirks, just induce Nomu and monsterization in his victims. He concludes as he ripped through more Nomu like bloody tissue paper, including a group that unfortunately once seemed to be a family, if the shared reptilian mutation was any indication. That must be why all these Nomu look different yet similar. They've undergone basic Nomu augmentation to expose their brains and change their musculoskeletal structures, and then been monsterized to strengthen them. Izuku theorizes as he slices a Nomu's head off that had elongated and sharpened nails. The only quirks these things have are their original ones. Only now they're more dangerous due to the augmentation of monsterization. He determines as he shreds a Nomu with compound eyes. However, as Izuku was analyzing the Nomu and creating strategy, he suddenly found himself dogpiled by them. With this distraction, AFO took the opportunity to grab Izuku with his giant fists. Gah! Izuku cried out as the villain squeezed him. Now then, why don't we pick up where we left off? AFO suggests as red and black lighting appears and envelopes Izuku. As he did so, however, the villain was shocked. He found nothing? What? That's not possible. You were supposed to have it. AFO yelled in confusion. Oh, you mean OFA, don't you? Sorry to burst your perception of reality, but I've never needed a quirk to be strong. Izuku replied as he struggled to escape the villain's grasp. Impossible. How can you possibly be so strong without a quirk? AFO demanded angrily as Izuku smiled smugly. What? Did your new sugar daddy not tell you who I am? In that case, just think of me an anomaly. Izuku replied mockingly. Then I'll just have to dispose of a dangerous anomaly like you by crushing you into paste. AFO firmly states as he begins to crush Izuku using all his strength quirks. Ghak? Izuku exclaimed as he was crushed in AFO's hands and coughed up BLD. Ah, yes. Die, die, die. AFO laughed as he claimed his victory. However, as both Endeavor and Tornio helplessly watched as Izuku was being crushed to death, a new challenger entered the battlefield. Luna Arc. Maruko cried out as she split AFO's skull with his drop kick, causing him to drop Izuku. Gah! The villain cried out in pain. As the villain convulsed in pain, Maruko caught the falling Izuku and the others killed the remaining Nomu. Maruko? Why were you here? Izuku asked as he stood on his own town feet. Because. Maruko began as she karate chopped him on the head in a scolding manner. You decided to throw yourself into a fight with a Fing supervillain, and you didn't invite me. She states firmly with an angry expression. Well, it was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, and it's not like I have your phone number. Izuku replies as he nurses his head and cracked bones. Enough chit-chat, you two. He's recovering. Torino interjected as he pointed to AFO. Another foolish hero dares to touch me. When will this indignity end? AFO shouted in fury as he decides to take this seriously now. I am AFO, the Demon King of Japan, MSTR of quirks, Monster King ordained my god. And I have had enough. The monstrous villain shouts as he begins charging massive quirk attacks. Here it comes. Endeavor states as all four of them prepare for the battle of a lifetime. And oh boy did things get intense. All four heroes tried their best, but his new Monster King wasn't playing around anymore. AFO had foregone his usual theatrics and was now focusing exclusively on one thing: total victory. He immediately focused down the weakest link on the chain, Torino, and used a telekinetic quirk to grab the annoying old pensioner out the air, holding up in place. He then used one of his giant fists to punch the old hero into a building, causing it to collapse on top of the old man. 1 down, 3 to go. He then turned his attention to the flame hero. AFO used a combination of ice and temperature manipulation quirks to extinguish the arrogant matchstick's embers, before then grabbing his leg and slamming him into the ground several times. Another one was down. Next, he turned to deal with the annoying bunny girl. Though her speed and strength were impressive for a mere human, he was superior. He used his river stab, quick to surround her before stabbing her through the lower intestine and crashing her into a still-standing building, before then dragging her through all its floors into its basement. Only one left now, the strongest human he'd ever met. AFO focused Midoriya with ruthless bloodhound precision, using every possible quirk combination to tag the child. Whilst Midoriya put up a good fight against him, AFO eventually pinned him using an earth manipulation quirk to ensnare one of his legs, before then blasting the boy with a massive energy attack. The boy tried to endure it with all his strength, but AFO just added more enhancement quirks to increase the output. After the impact subsided, Izuku fell to the floor in defeat, the attack overwhelmingly his endurance. He'd won. Ahahaha, at last. You all learn your places, beneath me. Ahaha. AFO laughed as the country feared for its life. As AFO cackled victoriously over the heroes, however, Izuku glared up at him with furious fire in his eyes. This isn't where this ends. And I won't let it. Izuku thinks to himself as he forces his arms up, clenched his fists, and slammed his elbows into the ground to force himself to his feet. As Izuku forced himself to stand tall, the memories of friends and family and the thought of losing them pushed him through the pain. He grit his teeth so hard they cracked, and his anger rose to a point in which he could no longer contain himself. Then, one of his scara turned red. You still have the will to stand? AFO asked mockingly as he floated menacingly before Izuku. So long as there is life in my cells, I will always stand in the way of that ominous future. Izuku replied as his anger hit its peak and his strength evolved even further. Then by all means hit me with your best shot, boy. AFO replied as he raised 2 hands and began collecting divine energy into a massive sphere. I plan to. Izuku muttered as he zeroed in on a single point of AFO's body. Izuku then planted his feet, clenched his fists, and took a perfect water stream rock-smashing fist stance. Begone! AFO shouted as he fired the energy he'd been gathering. As soon as the beam got within mere meters of Izuku, he acted. Kerkum! By jumping right through it with all his might. Izuku ascended through the beam, using his martial arts to carve a tunnel right into AFO. Raipriep. Then right punched right through him. Izuku, using his momentum and strength, pierced AFO's body like human bullet. With only one thing to say. Monster Calamity God Slayer Fist. Spearing attack. Izuku shouted as he utilized his ultimate martial arts to rip through the villain's body and tore something out. Ugh. Izuku grunted as he hit the ground on the other side. UBSDRD. AFO cried out only to be cut off as he vomited up enough BLD to fill a bathtub. Not feeling too hot there? Izuku asked smugly as the monster grasped his wound, which was oozing BLD like a waterfall. Why am I not regenerating? AFO demanded as his wound stubbornly refused to heal. 'Cause I nabbed something you monsters need to recover. Izuku replied as he revealed what he had stolen. Within Izuku's right hand was a fleshy sphere the size of football, which beat like heart and writhed as if it was its own entity. My heart. AFO asked painfully. Close your regeneration core. I sensed its location through its energy as you used. Izuku replied as began to apply pressure on it. No, don't you dare. AFO cried out as Izuku burst the organ like a BLD balloon. Without that, you can't regenerate anymore. Izuku states weakly as he could barely stand, having exhausted the height of his power. But you're weak now, meaning I can still kill yo blergh. AFO stated in an enraged fashion only for his body to fail him. What is this? I feel like my body is shaking apart. AFO states as Cracked began bleeding across his body. For that brief moment I was inside you. I left a little gift exploding heart release fist. I gave you a full dose, and now your body is literally pulling itself apart at the cellular level. Izuku explained with a smug expression. DM you. How did a quirkless wretch like you get so strong? AFO shouted indignantly. Easy, I just surpassed my limits. Izuku replies with a smug smile. At that point a black slime emerged from AFO's mouth and forcibly teleported him away. And don't come back. Izuku said faintly as he feinted the physical toll of using his ultimate martial arts without the appropriate body finally catching up to him. As he did so, he heard the sounds of police and ambulances, and thought himself, I've got so much explaining to do when I wake up, don't I? Izuku thinks to himself as he passes out. God's dimension. As Izuku was left to face the music, a certain evil deity was scheming in delight. Excellent, I now have a candidate for sacrificing to enact my resurrection upon this feeble world. God states as they look upon the world from their personal pocket of space. However, every good king needs subjects to serve and die for them. In that regard, this league of villains is insubstantial, thus I suppose I must call upon older creations to aid my new apostle. God exposits as they call upon the shadows of the past to terrorizes the future. Dramatic camera pan to a backlit area. We see numerous familiar and monstrous shapes shrouded in darkness. So, this was the end of part 9 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.